Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings to you, our recurrent lecturer, Mr. Ding, and our dear classmate. I am Simon Petrus Pajihawana, and my company is Sister Rofina. Today, we are glad to share with you our presentation about culture shock. To start with, Sister Rofina will explain to us the overview of our presentation.
Our presentation will go as follows. The first, we will see the definition of the culture shock. Second, the cause of culture shock. Third, the symptoms of culture shock. The fourth, the stages of culture shock. And lastly, we will see how to cope with culture shock.
Point A, what is a culture shock? First, the trauma you experience when you move into a culture different from your home culture. Second, the personal disorientation a person may feel when experiencing an unfamiliar way of life due to immigration or a visit to a new country, or to a move between social environments, also a simple travel to another type of life.
Second, the cause of culture shock. There are some things that causes the culture shock. The first is the language barrier. The language barrier, where you do not understand the language in the new place where you are, especially when you do not even know the international language, which is English. Second, the frustration. Third, anxiety and stress. Fourth, the foods. The foods of the new place may not fit to your taste, or you may wonder about the new food that you find in the new place. The fifth, the values. Every place, every country will have its own values, and not all the values are the same with your values in the place where you live. So you will be shocked when you encounter the new values. Next, what are the symptoms of culture shock? Here are some common symptoms of culture shock. There will be anxiety, depression, loneliness, being homesick, disturbed sleep patterns, remoteness or isolation, decreased productivity, poor time management, drastic personality changes, and I'm sure that there are still many other symptoms.
Okay, point D, the stage of culture shock. Culture shock can arise in many different ways and for many different reasons. To understand how to prevent and adapt to a new travel experience, we first need to understand it. There are 5 major phases of a culture shock. First, the honeymoon stage. You know, when you first arrive in a new place and everything is just fantastic. That's the so-called honeymoon stage. In this stage, you're in love with your new travel destination. All the new foods, the people, and unforgettable attractions and things to do. It's all just so wonderful that nothing else really matters. This amazing feeling of wanderlust differs to everyone a little. Unfortunately, for For most of us, this feeling doesn't last too long before the next stage sets in. The second, hostility and irritability. Nothing gold can stay right. This is where the negative effect of culture shock come into play. Once again, this stage will be a little more powerful for some, or it might even hit you as soon as you step off the plane. You may start to find frustrating system or aspect of the culture in this stage. Something just confuses and irritates you, either because it's different than what you expect or doesn't make logical sense to your origin default mind, or simply it frustrates you for a reason you don't even know why. Still, the most important change in the period in communication, people adjusting to a new culture often feel lonely and homesick because they are not yet used to the new environment and meet people with whom they are not familiar every day. And the third, gradual adjustment. After some time, one grows accustomed to the new culture and develops routines. Marking the adjustment phase, one knows what to expect in most situations and the host country no longer feels all that new. One becomes concerned with basic living again and things become more normal. The culture begins to make sense and negative reactions and responses to the culture are reduced. Adjusting gradually is subjective from person to person. It might take just a few hours, or weeks, or even months. It all depends on the person, so the shock they are exposed to and how they can cope. Finding ways to slowly overcome the differences will vary in every country and place you visit, even if there are lonely slight variances between the cultures, language, food, traffic. In the list could go on and on. And the fourth, finally, you overcome the differences and find a sense of belonging in your new environment. You learn to accept the differences in culture, and while it might not be the level of love you felt in the honeymoon stage, you're comfortable with this new place and feelings. Sometimes we might seem to skip over this stage that you seem to just skip, gradually adjusting and never feel quiet at home in a country or city. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes a city might be too busy or a country might be too laid back for your state on you never really reach the stage of full acceptance.
The fifth one, reentry travel shock. As humans, we adapt, some more quickly than others, but eventually, a new way of life somehow imprints on us. We wake up when the time zone tells us it's daytime. We eat at local restaurants and interact with everyone around us. It changes you. No matter how much you close yourself off to outside influences, something changes inside us as we adjust to this new society and come to peace with it. That is, if we allow it. This adaptation is a great thing. It's how travel teaches us its best lessons. It's how we come back home with tales that make our friends and family envious. But now we are adjusted to this other society's different ways of life. What happens when we eventually return home? Everything is new and different once again. This is known as reentry shock. It happens when you have spent so long away from your home and aren't accustomed to how things operate in your own place. Let us see how to cope with culture shock. Culture shock can be prevented by striving to become more culturally relativistic and flexible in thinking and behavior, by developing a real enthusiasm for learning about the host culture, and by forming real intercultural relationships. Successful cross-cultural communication is a fairly straightforward proposition. There are many ways to heal culture shock, but probably the best way is to make an effort to adjust to the new culture. Here are some suggestions on how to make yourself feel more at home in your new country. First, admit that these impacts exist. It is not a sign of weakness to admit that you feel uncomfortable, tense, or confused. Second, learn the rules of living in your new country. Try to understand how and why the local people act the way they do. Their behavior and customs, although they may be different from your own, are neither better nor worse than what you are used to. Third, get involved in some aspect of the new culture. Whether you study art or music, or learn a new sport or hobby, being an interested student will make a world of difference. Fourth, take time to learn the language. It always helps to understand as much as possible of what people are saying. They will appreciate your effort to communicate with them in their language, even if it is just a few simple phrases, and it will make your daily life much easier. Next, take care of yourself. Eat well, exercise, and take the time to sleep. Limit your alcohol consumption to moderate amounts. Next, travel. Take the time to be a tourist and explore the country's sights. Next, make friends and develop relationships. Getting to know local people will help you overcome cultural differences and understand the country. It will also show you how to be more sensitive to cultural expectation. Next, maintain contact with your friends and family back home. Writing home about your experiences and problems can help you sort through them. It is also a good idea to keep a journal of your feelings and thoughts. Next, do something that reminds you of your home. Listening to your favorite music or practicing a familiar hobby can boost your spirits when you're feeling homesick. Lastly, avoid idealizing life back home. Try to make the most of your new home and try to keep an open mind. Thank you for your attention. That is all our presentation about culture shock. Do you have any questions? We are waiting for your questions and we will discuss it together in e-learning. Thank you for your attention and once again, we are waiting for your discussion in the group.